Hey guys, how's it going? Paul Harris here. So I've made a few videos in the past talking about my experience at PwC. I've talked about how you can transition from PwC into, say, a finance analyst role. I thought in today's video I'd compare, say, working in a finance analyst role to my experience working in a commercial business partnering role. So if you are doing accounting and finance, or you're thinking about moving into one of these kind of commercially orientated roles, this video should be for you. I'll break down the differences, my experience working in each, which one I prefer, the kind of day-to-day role that you do. Hopefully it's helpful to some people. This is my experience. It's probably not every role out there, different roles are going to give you different things, but this is my experience working in both those kind of roles. So hopefully it's useful for you. If you do like it, subscribe to my channel, like this video, and let's get into it. So as I said, I moved from PwC into a finance analyst role, and then I've moved from a finance analyst role into a commercial business partnering role. Now, I remember when I was at PwC, or prior to doing any sort of role in industry, I didn't really have a good understanding of what either role would entail or what the differences were. I remember thinking, though, that I wouldn't be able to just jump straight into a commercial business partnering role because I'd had no commercial experience. But now, having done a commercial business partnering role for 2 years, I'd done a finance analyst role for a few years as well. So I've done these roles for quite a while now to understand what they entail. And actually, I think you could transition straight from practice into, say, a commercial business partnering role. Now, as a finance analyst, I was working in an FP&A team. I talked about this in my previous video, but basically what you're doing there is preparing, say, budgets, forecasts, actuals analysis in a more commercially focused area. So not like from a statutory accounting perspective, but you're just doing a lot of analysis over different information, and you're gearing that to, say, the CFO and just providing a more thorough understanding of where the business is heading. Now, there's a lot of factors there that transition into a commercial business partnering role, but with a commercial business partnering role, you do have set areas that you are partnering. So that could be a product area or an operational area, or it could be a commercial business area. So it could be like geographical. And that's basically where the main difference is. With a financial analyst role, you might just be looking at a total level of, say, the profit and loss, balance sheet, or cash flow, working capital, that kind of stuff. And that's what a finance analyst does. You're still quite ingrained in what the financial accounts say, but it is a more commercial focus. Maybe you're looking at more KPIs to do with the P&L statement. Any sort of information is broad, a finance analyst role. But a commercial business partnering role is almost more focused on a certain area. So like I said, you could be saying, okay, you're going to look after UK and Asia Pacific. And from a commercial perspective, you might have sales guys that you're talking to, and you're giving commercial business partnering to that person. So they might want to put through business cases. They want to understand stuff that's going on with the business, and you're partnering them more specifically and providing financial support to them. But as a result of that, you might gather information at month end to do with what's going on commercially and feed that through to a finance analyst working in an FP&A role. The same as if you work in an operationals team as a commercial business partner, you might work with, say, an operationals department to work out whether you can hire more staff, what the productivity is like from a financial perspective of certain operational plans and decisions. So there's a distinction there which separates the finance analyst from a commercial business partner. Now, a lot of finance analysts might say the business partner. Generally speaking, they're more collating and analyzing data, whereas a business partner really does work with someone to say, what is the financial aspects of different operations and different situations in terms of how they're going to push the business forward. And I would say it is a lot more commercially focused in that regard. So you have to use a lot of data that isn't specifically driven by what the financial system's saying. So you could have like a SAP system, an Oracle system, which collates a lot of financial data, like in a journal format, but that's not really the data you're using. You might be using a lot of offline Excel. You could be doing a lot more ad hoc work where there just really isn't a data source in a commercial finance business partnering role, which is different to a finance analyst role where normally there's a lot of data that you can get your hands on, with depreciation or, property, plant, and equipment. You can always get to a register of some sort in order to get the information. So that's what the distinction is. And that basically explains the day-to-day. They're both kind of similar in terms of, the first 3-4 days of a month might be collating information or doing some sort of journal work or assisting with the other accounting teams which are actually preparing like sets of accounts. But you're more providing assistance as opposed to doing anything specific in terms of the preparation of the accounts. But the finance analyst role might be more interested in looking at like 5-year plans and a total overview of what's going on within the profit and loss cash flow in terms of understanding where the business is going and what the actuals are in terms of analyzing it. Whereas a commercial business partner might be working for the remainder of the month with a specific part of the business in terms of pushing through deadlines, tracking the progress on projects and things like that. And from that perspective, I do prefer commercial business partnering role. I actually feel like I'm more tending towards doing a lot more project work, and therefore I'd like in the future to say move more into say operational work, because I feel like I'm more suited to actually doing and seeing like the results of a project as opposed to just providing financial support. So that's sort of the way I'm aiming, and that's why I've sort of gone from audit into finance analyst to commercial business partnering, because I'm sort of tending that way to wanting to work more in operations and getting decision making. Whereas if you are more tending towards wanting to stay in the accounts but looking more at like 5-year plans and things like that, a finance analyst role might be better for you. But overall, I don't think it's difficult to get into either one of these roles. Okay, you might struggle to prove in what your role is now, particularly if you're doing something like audit or working in practice. It might be difficult to sort of explain what commercial elements of your job you have, but you can always find it. As I said in the previous video, if you're moving from practice into, say, straight into a commercial business partner role, you have to really be able to show that you might have worked on some ad hoc projects or loads of judgmental items within financial accounts that involve having to talk to strategic teams and loads of forward-looking aspects of the audit. But to move from a finance analyst role to a commercial business partner role, there's still going to be some doubt about your level of commercial knowledge, but that's just something to be shown in the interview. You have to do a lot of research about the company, read the news about what is going to happen with that company, where is the company going commercially, and just being able to show that you have a wider understanding than just saying I've looked up the set of accounts and I know this is what revenue you have. What's driving that revenue, what are the aspects that change the business in the future, and what are the risks, as opposed to just saying I know all the numbers off by heart, which might get you the role in a finance analyst role, but you need to show more commercial knowledge in a commercial business partnering role. But overall, I think both those salaries as well, if we're talking the money of them, are relatively the same. I would almost say that with a finance analyst role, there might be more stages of progression, because you might be in a finance analyst role and a finance manager of that set element of the financial statements, and then you move up into, say, the head of that FP&A department, and then you move up again into, say, obviously like deputy CFO or whatever, something like that. Whereas with a commercial business partnering, it might actually be more flat, because you sort of take control of a lot more of the areas that you're looking at, and it might just be that you have a lot more ownership over that area, and to move up might be to own the entire project and things like that. So it's really hard to say. It depends on the type of company, how large it is, what sort of scale, and what sort of hierarchical structure they have. Some companies are just a lot more flat than others. But I'd say sort of a commercial finance business partner might get marginally higher salary than a finance analyst, just because it's given that there's a lot more commercial knowledge there for you to actually have had that role. Just because you assume that the person has a lot more commercial knowledge before transitioning into that role, whereas with a finance analyst, you can sort of go there as a more entry level. I think that's my understanding of it anyway. So it is relatively the same, but I think commercial business partner is higher, but then there might be slightly more progression within finance analyst. But, it's really hard to say, as I said. So hopefully that's helpful to some people. That is literally just a breakdown of some of my experiences. That might have been useful for some people, depending on where you're thinking in terms of placing your career, what your sort of objective is. If it's to get to sort of CFO role, then maybe a finance analyst position is better. If you want to move into a more operational role and to look way more commercially and to make more decisions, then maybe that's a good transition. But really, it's up to you. But hopefully that's interesting, useful for some people. If you didn't know how those two things were different from each other, hopefully that's useful. If you did think it was useful, smash that like button, subscribe to my channel. See you next time. Thanks for watching.